This is John Ribeiro with the Catholic Schools Office of the Archdiocese of Boston, and today we're going to be discussing Zoom security. You may know that Zoom has recently changed some of their default security settings to make things more secure in their Zoom meetings. But we're going to go through and verify that on a new account. Here are some of the basic settings that you want to ensure are in place to protect your classes from Zoom bombing, as it's called. With that, we are going to sign up for a new account. You'll notice that Zoom is now asking for a date of birth to confirm that you are old enough to obtain an account. You should know that students are not required to have a Zoom account in order to attend your meetings. They will not be asked to provide this information. Okay, I'm going to, okay, here is my new Zoom account. We are going to go over here on the left-hand side to the settings. Now these are not security settings, but we do want to turn on the host video and the participants video upon entry. Um, Obviously, it's going to help us know who people are. We also don't want to change this setting, join before host. We want to leave that as it is. We can see that this is something new, require a password when scheduling new meetings. That is a new default. We're going to ensure that require password for instant meetings is set. Also, that requiring a password for personal meeting ID meetings. And we want to make sure that all meetings using PMI require a password. Now here's a setting that we want to change. Embed password in meeting link for one-click join. And let me show you what this actually means. So we want to disable that setting. When the password is embedded, what we see here is that the password is added to the link, the URL that's provided to users, so they don't have to actually manually put that password in place. And if we disable that, this is what the URL looks like. There is no password at the end. Even though it's an encrypted password, as you could see, this is still a piece of data that a program could grab and then a hacker could grab and automatically check to see if this is a valid meeting. And if it's a valid meeting, then that's one that they would try to hack into. So we are going to go back and we're going to change that. Okay, we are also happy to see that the default is now to require passwords for participants joining by phone. Mute participants on entry. That's something we want to set. We're going down to the chat area here we're looking at. So we do want to allow people to chat, but we want it to only be with everybody and not private chats. In a classroom, you wouldn't have your students passing notes. You would discourage that. So we want to do that as well here. So this, by changing this setting, we're going to prevent people from sending messages to one another while the class is going on. Okay, playing a sound. We want to set this. This is going to alert you if someone joins or leaves the meeting. That's going to be helpful. Someone might get kicked off and you may have to look to see if they re-enter the meeting, or you might have someone who's attempting to enter the meeting that doesn't belong there. All right, file transfer. We want to disable that. Um, Files can contain malicious code, so we want to disable file transfer in our Zoom meetings. We have other ways to get files back and forth to one another outside of the Zoom chat. Now we're going to go down to screen sharing. And in a classroom setting, what we want to do is we want to have it so that only the host can share their screen. Otherwise, any of the participants can just start sharing. Okay, so we're going to save that. Okay, now it's set. Okay, annotation. We want to turn this off. What that does is it would allow participants to write on the screen while the host was sharing the screen, and we want to disable that. Remote control. This is something you definitely want to disable. It is something that you would have to explicitly grant permission to someone else, but we just want to put this safeguard in place and not and have it be prevented here in the settings, so that's not even an option from anybody else. Okay, allowing participants to rename themselves. We want to disable that. Obviously, we want to know who our students are that are in the classroom, and if we don't recognize the name, then we're going to remove them from the class. Now, virtual background, this is something that going to be up to you. At the younger grades, they've had some fun with this. At the older grades, some have used this maliciously. So you know your classes, and you could decide whether to leave this enabled or not. Waiting room. We want to ensure that this is set, and we've talked about this in emails that have gone out, but we want to ensure that we're using the waiting room and only admitting people who are known to us into the Zoom meeting. Okay, and those are all the settings here. We're going to scroll back up to the top of the screen and look at the settings for recording. Okay, we want to disable this where the host can give participants permission to record locally. If there's any recording to be going on, we only want the host to do that. Okay, and that's all the settings we're concerned with here on this page. Going over to the telephone settings. We want to mask the phone number in the participant list. So there is an option for folks to call into the meeting, but when that phone number shows up in the list, we want it to be masked so we're not sharing people's personal phone numbers. Okay, those are all of the security settings. At this point, we're going to talk about scheduling and starting meetings. Let me go back over to the PowerPoint. Okay, you may or may not know this, but not all meetings are created equal. The security settings aren't the same across all of the meeting types, and we'll take a look at that. There are 3 different ways you can start a meeting. You can have an instant meeting. You can start a meeting from your personal meeting room, or you can schedule a meeting in advance. Let's take a look at each of those. So here's the host a meeting. Okay, this is an instant meeting. We don't want to use this functionality at all. This is the most permissive functionality, and so we don't even want to use this to host meetings. Let me go to there we go. Under meetings, we have the personal meeting room. And as I said, the security settings aren't the same across all of the meeting types. And I want to show you at the bottom here. The waiting room is enabled. That is a new security setting, which is good. And that's a new default. But the mute participants upon entry is not set. Okay. The require meeting password is, and you can see that the password is not embedded. So that did propagate over, which is good. Additionally, just going back to this enable waiting room, this is something that prior to the recent setting changes was not propagated from the settings that we just looked at to the personal meeting room. So due to this discrepancy, I wouldn't recommend starting meetings from this personal meeting room. If we do look at, click on meetings again, and we see, we're defaulted over here to upcoming meetings and schedule a new meeting. Okay. If we schedule recurring classes and okay, you can look at this note here. If you are a teacher, Zoom will lift this 40 limit time limit. All you have to do is ask them. Okay, so we are scheduling this meeting, this class, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay, I'm just going to leave it on those defaults. Additionally, we can see that the defaults that we set or the settings that we set are carried over. Mute participants, enable waiting room. You don't want to change those. We're going to click save. Okay, I'm going to go back to my meetings, and you see we have a meeting scheduled, and we have a meeting ID that was generated specifically for that meeting. Okay, and when you want to start this meeting, when it's time for the class, you can come in here and click on start. The way that you share this meeting with your class is to click on it, that highlighted link, and to now copy the invitation. Now when you click copy, what's going to happen is you're going to get all of this info. Okay? Now you can note that it's listing out all of these dates in the future. You can paste this into a calendar invite, or you can send it by email. You may or may not want to include all of these future dates, so you can edit this once you get it into either your email or your calendar invite. Something else I wanted to point out is that you do have this long URL. This is not the meeting join link, the link to join the meeting. This is a link to get a calendar file to import. That's not something we need to be concerned with. You can see down here, this is the link to join the meeting, and here is the password that will then have to be entered manually. Okay. And if you go back and you were to set up a new meeting, and I'll just do this very quickly, just schedule, and go back to my meetings, you'll see that every time you schedule a new meeting, you're going to get a new meeting ID. So this also adds a new layer, additional layer of security. So to recap, should we use instant meetings? No. Should we use the personal meeting room? I'd also recommend against that because the settings didn't always propagate, the security settings didn't always propagate to the personal meeting room. So should you schedule a new meeting using the process we just showed you? Yes, I would definitely use that. All right, that is all we have on Zoom security. Once again, if you are looking for additional help on this or any other technology topic, please reach out to me via Schedulicity, the link provided, or directly by email. Thank you so much, and I hope this was helpful.